Hey everyone, welcome to the Leadership Mindset. I'm Ed Kumar with Upstream Development, and I'm with Teddy Cass today, who's just getting his blur out a little bit. Teddy is the owner and head coach of PowerCore Boxing, and also has a YouTube channel called Unwinding Roads, which is all about four by fours, specifically Jeeps, but I think four by fours in general. In case you've got some audience out there, Teddy, that's got things going on. Teddy and I have known each other for I think 10 years now at least,
Oh yeah, yeah.
easily. And so, Teddy, why don't you introduce yourself?
So I'm Teddy, and started boxing when I was a little bit older than most. I was about 20 when I started boxing. Um, that led to um, having a couple of exhibition bouts. Got in a huge car accident. Couldn't work anymore. Couldn't fight anymore. Started helping out at the gym. Um, Fast forward another 10 years. Started my own, which was called Powercore Boxing, and got hit with COVID. So we adapted, started doing some online stuff, and that sort of led into um, what I do now as well, which is unwinding roads and doing some 4x4 stuff. So that's where
Cool.
we're at
So,
today.
so to give a little bit of reference here, so when I was doing kickboxing instruction with Posner's Pancration and MMA, um, Teddy had that space as well, and so Teddy's class was generally before my class, and was filled with laughter and a bunch of students, and so I would kind of egg on him as he was trying to teach something, and then he would hang out and egg on me for a little bit as well. But then, yeah, when COVID happened, like what happened with that? How did you adapt going from group classes, having an entire, you had fighters that you were training,
Yep.
um, and then what?
Um, so yeah, so once COVID hit and everything happened so fast, it was it was everybody go home for 2 weeks. And at first that wasn't so bad. Everybody goes home for 2 weeks. We just did some online classes. The online classes were just as busy as my real classes, and everything was going smooth. And then the building got sold, and this was pretty much during the shutdown, and it was time to move. So to reopen during that time was going to be a little bit tricky. So we ended up not reopening, and yeah. So the I guess the change is still happening. So we're still trying to figure out um, what the next step is. Gyms sort of just opened back up,
Hmm.
so you know we'll see. And regarding the fighters, I had one fighter in particular, Anthony. Who actually has a fight coming up this weekend. So that's pretty cool. A
Cool.
lot
So,
of
so you're still one-on-one training people in your home space.
I am. Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
the other thing. So I started training people in my home space. Just that's more of the private training. Anthony actually when moved on to another gym that was able to stay open during the whole thing. So which is I'm happy for him because I would hate to see, especially at his age, um, a fighter to take 2 years off or 3 years off.
Yeah,
That's
it's a huge window. Huge
right,
window.
exactly. So super happy for him. And yeah, so I started training people out of my garage. I quit, I got a speed bag up there. I think you can see it.
Yeah.
I have a heavy bag
I've never
behind
been
me.
good at speed bag. Like people are like, oh, you teach kickboxing? Yeah, yeah. Don't ask me to do the speed bag.
You could probably kick it though.
Yeah.
Us
Okay,
boxers
so
aren't that
so
flexible.
so Teddy, you kind of you touched on this idea here where you adapted pretty quick, and so as an entrepreneur, as someone who, is coaching and leading people, adaptability. What is it in you that made you someone who could be like, okay, great, we just need to do this now? Like, where does that come from?
I'm not sure. I want to say it's genetics, to be honest. And but I don't know. It's the same thing with fighting, and there's different theories and everything. But I do believe, like, even with fighting, sometimes you get hit, you get knocked down. Some people get up right away and adapt. Some people, they kind of shut down and they don't want to be there anymore. Um, I'm definitely one of those people that just keep adapting and keep trying new things. It's almost a fault because I'll keep trying new things until I fail. And
And
so
then
I
you
pretty
get
much
bored with
fail
the
at
stuff
everything I do.
that is working, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So so yeah, and then it just everything sort of fell into place at the time. When you leave a lot of doors open, um things will start to, some doors will close that you have no control over, but you'll always have other doors that are open that you can, walk through and pursue. So I mean, we're still adapting, like I said. I'm still keeping an eye open for what the next step is. I really don't know right now. I wish I could give you like some sort of this is where we're at. But like I said, some things sort of fall into place, but you have to have all those doors open to make sure that this is my personal belief, is and um and then the hard work comes once you step through that door. And then that's when you have to make sure. And then another thing is about being ready, right? So you always have to be ready for whatever is coming up next. I use Junior Moore as a great example of that. Junior Moore was the light heavyweight champion of Canada, and he needed a mitt holder up in Vancouver. At the time, he was training down in LA with Freddie Roach, and he needed somebody up here. Well, he gave me a call, and I held the mitts. And after one round, he said, can I have you as as my coach up here? If I didn't have those skill sets, that opportunity would have passed by, right? So yeah. Am I going blurry again?
A little bit, yeah, yeah, but yeah, there you go. But okay, so that's a cool thing where you're like, be ready, but also keep moving, right?
Right.
So there's this like, and so let's stick with this metaphor of boxing and martial arts and physical sport, and especially in combat sport, right? Like you can't let yourself slide. I mean, I'm saying this kind of ironically because I've let myself slide a little bit. So
I think
things
we
have
all
come down
have.
a little bit, but it's one of those things where um, you just focus on the work, like focus on the process, focus on like how many reps did you get in. Like overcorrecting is sometimes like a major issue with young coaches, right? Like you see that where they're overcorrecting, and it's like they'll spend 10 minutes explaining something, and then the guy gets like one round,
Right. Yeah.
as opposed to him getting 3 rounds and like a minute of explanation. I mean, I'm
Right.
guilty of that as well, but how do you kind of take that metaphor of like getting the reps in and being able to push through with like when you get pushback from a student who's like, man, I just need to wind down here, but they don't. Like as a coach because you've seen the pattern,
Right.
right? How do you instill that? Like what do you do to keep them on track?
Um, what do you mean? So like as in they're overworking, or are they
Well, maybe it's overworking or maybe it's underworking, but
right?
like as a coach where that path is, where that's going to give them the optimal outcome, right?
Right. So okay, so yeah. So experience plays a huge role in that, right? So as a coach, and I'm lucky enough to deal with all sorts of people. Um, and I'm sure you can attest to that. People all learn very different, and it's almost individual to individual how somebody will learn and what their version of success is of learning. So I've trained people where I ask them to do something and they do it horribly, but they think they've got it and they're happy with what they've accomplished. Well, in reality, they're almost right because they've successfully understood what you've asked them to do, right? So to them, that's a success and they're happy. They think they've got it. Of course, in our eyes, especially when it comes to combat sports, where if you're not doing things correctly, the the bad outcome is not good, right?
It's
It's
an
not like they
immediate
score a
feedback.
goal. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like they score a goal and you go home and like, oh, I had a bad game. You can get very hurt very quick in this game. So once they successfully understood what you've asked, um, for me, it's more about uh, making it fun, of course, so that they want to put in the time. As you've mentioned already, it's like there's a lot of laughter in all the classes that we did, and then
like,
and then
like a lot. Like it was incredible. Actually, it was pretty
yeah.
awesome.
so it's actually a little bit of a switch. I started to stray a little bit off of it, but it's almost a little bit of a switch. I generally with the classes kept it very, very fun. With the sparring sessions was complete opposite. There was no joking around whatsoever. I mean, when I had a big thing where once you've decided to step through the ropes with your mouth guard in and your headgear on, now it's not a game. It's not like for fun anymore, right? Like you're gonna get hurt. So no more joking around. Let's get serious. And maybe after the sparring session, I'd crack a joke or something like you need to work on your left hook or whatever it is, right? But yeah. But then other than that, I look at people like, do you want to compete or do you not want to compete? Do you want to just learn the skills? If it's something that they just want to learn the skills, and let's do that, right? And then it doesn't matter. The success level is fine if they think that they're good on the speed bag and they're really not, but in their mind they've grasped the understanding of what to do and they're happy with that. Great. Hey, I mean, really, like at the end of the day, we're doing this for health reasons, to stay fit, mental reasons, to have an outlet, and that's, as a coach, like that's all that you can really ask for and be happy with, right?
How are you able to discern between someone who had that competitive drive to want to actually step into the ring and compete, whether tournament level or exhibition match or actual, amateur level all the way up into pro? How did you discern whether that person was actually ready or just kind of wanted like to posture that was the case? There's like people have these different mindsets, right? And to correlate this back into a business setting, oftentimes you get people who want to get a promotion, but
Right.
they don't want to do the balanced amount of responsibility and accountability. They just kind of want the title, right?
Right.
So how do you get someone who wants the title being like, yeah, man, I fought in the ring, but they're not doing the other side? Just
Right.
talk a little bit about that. There's a few different
It's
concepts in there.
interesting. Yeah, so that's very interesting. So I'm sure you came across that a lot, and I definitely have, especially with boxing. They want to come in, and everybody wants to fight. Am I still going blurry?
Oh,
Because if
you're
I
good.
am,
You're good.
okay.
It looks good.
Yeah. So j- at first, it's all about learning the skills, and right there you can tell, are they here to learn the skills, or are they here to, and this is gonna sound a little bit funny, but I was also one of those like flashy guys that wanted to have the nice, flashy shoes and the flashy gloves and the flashy jersey when I went to train. So I definitely, looked like I just wanted to look like a boxer, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And but you can kind of tell right away where it's like somebody like that comes in, somebody like me, and right out the gate, you're like, you're not here to work, you're here to, you know,
Right.
look the part.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
but of course there is also people like myself that end up putting in the extra reps, staying in the extra little bit. They're not taking selfies with the bag, they're hitting the bag, and you start to pick that up as a coach like really, really fast. Within the first couple of sessions you can tell whether they're here to learn the skill or whether they're here for a photo op, right?
Hmm.
And that will transfer directly to how they become fighters. Um, that transition happens when they just you can't stop them from fighting. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like they're gonna do it. They're there every day. They don't miss sparring sessions. They don't miss training sessions, and that's the whole thing.
Here we go. We got Theo visiting.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing?
No.
No,
After.
Mom and me are gonna get ice cream, and
Okay.
we're not gonna bring
Thank you.
anything back.
No
It's
ice
good.
cream for you.
I don't
Teddy,
need
you're
any
not
ice
getting
cream.
Oh man,
Yeah,
no ice
we're
cream for
good.
Teddy. Oh.
We're good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the transition sort of happens on its own, and I can use an example. His name was Justin, and he was not very good. He was the opposite. He was not very good at boxing, but he wouldn't let it go. He just stayed with it. And I remember one time he
Just
came to
ground it out.
sorry,
You just grinded.
he just
Like,
grinded. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And he never missed training. But he wasn't good. And this was about 2 years into training. He still wasn't good. And he came to the corner and I said, listen, Justin, I can't sing. You don't see me with a microphone. Boxing's not for you.
Yeah.
And then he looks at me and he's like, well, you have to teach me. And I was like, I'm trying to teach you. He's like, it's your job. And I said, you know what, you're right. So we just kept on going with it. And then he ended up being a great fighter. And he was actually one of my first fighters, and he ended up doing very well.
So he just persevered and pushed through it. And
exactly. And then he had to learn. Yeah. But again, it goes back to one of those things where the people that are posers generally, once they get hit, you know what, it's not for me.
Totally. Yeah.
Like,
and getting hit is a huge thing. I mean, for me, I started martial arts when I was in my, pre-adolescence, right? So I was like 12, 13 years old. And the first time you get hit, you're like really get hit. And you're like, oh, okay, that's a thing. And it's interesting when you get, kind of the cliche of the dude who walks in and then, someone way lighter like myself, right? Just like smacks them and they're like,
yep.
And they don't want to do it anymore. Okay, so let's talk about ego here. Okay, so there's a balance point on ego because high-performing athletes have to have a certain amount of ego, but they have to have enough check on the ego so that they can grow.
Right.
But you can't squash it because it may lose their competitive edge.
Right.
So how do you manage that?
It's the same thing. So that's the ego thing is the guys that are going to make it, you can tell again pretty quick, is the ones that have that ego. I'm the best, but they also want to compete against the best, right? So again, that ego is a flaw when you're the best and you want to compete against people that you can beat, right? So that's where the line starts to get a little fuzzy. Like we've had people, and again, I'm sure you're in the same situation where, okay, let's do some sparring, but they only want to spar the guys that are less experienced, and younger or whatever the case it may be, or older, that they know that they can play around with a little bit, and then they feel good, right? They got their hands down, moving around, and whereas you get guys, I'll use another example, Robbie. Robbie always wanted to go in there with the best, whether he was ready or not. He just, like he was sparring Junior Moore, right? And he was, giving it his best, and that's what he wanted. He wanted to go against the best. He felt, again, it's almost a self thing where he was like, I'm the best. I got to compete with the best to prove it,
Yeah.
So
that's such a great quality. Like that quality of being like, okay, I'm at this high level and I'm getting better, but I want to be in that space where I'm constantly being humbled. And that's an important trait, within someone to kind of find that within themselves and go, yeah, like I'm really good at this. And I want to realize that, like I'll give you an example more recently for me. So I ride motorcycles on the track. You ride bikes as well. Not so much anymore, and I was doing really good at my last track day last October at Area 27, but it was in the top tier, right? So there was racers on the track and then like advanced riders. So I'm in the advanced riders, but it was open track, and suddenly these racers went past me like I was standing still.
Wow.
And I was doing like my fastest lap times. Right? So here I am just ringing out the like what I can do on this motorcycle. And I'm coming out of the corner. I'm like, oh, here it comes. Whoa. And I'm lift up the front tire and wang, wang, wang. 3 bikes come flying past me like I'm not moving. And I'm like, how is this even possible? It's so humbling. But then you're like, okay, how do I stick with these guys, right?
Right. Exactly.
And so the same thing in the ring. I mean, I remember when I was training with Simon full time and doing all of that stuff, and he had fighters going through the ranks. And I always loved being like, hey, who's training for a fight? Let me get some sparring sessions in with you, and let me get some training in with you, or who do I want to roll with? And that's where you learn, is when you're kind of like in that sort of that cushion of like you're not comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important trait. So when you're doing sort of group group sessions, like when you're training a group of people. So, then this kind of segues into like what happens when you have a team of employees or a team of
Mhm.
workers in business setting. Um, I'm trying to create this bridge between,
Yep.
coaching and business. How do you balance out the sort of the strategy on how challenging you're making the class so that the people who are high performing are not bored, and the people that are learning, not like very, very base learning, but that are learning are challenged but not being squashed.
Mhm.
How do you balance that in a class setting?
So a lot of it is mental. So I had a huge, actually I'm wearing a shirt, Paulie. So when I went down to LA, I had it like I've been training for at this point, I don't know, I want to say 15 years, maybe a bit more. And and not just like regular train. Like I said, I worked at the gym for 10 years. So I was
Hmm.
training pretty much all day.
Yeah.
And after my car accident, there's a little bit of a story here, but after my car accident, I couldn't walk properly for 3 years. I had to relearn everything. So I specifically remember for the right hand and the left hook was about 2 hours each straight, like straight, just throwing my right hand, just throwing my left hook, just to, you know, relearn
Waking up the
everything.
nervous system and do all that
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And it was very much like a mental, like I'm not turning my foot. I gotta turn my foot more. I gotta turn my hip more. Something's not connecting. Anyway, fast forward, I'm at the gym in LA, Freddie Roach's gym, Wild Card is called. And I'm in the ring, and I'd already trained for about a week at this point. And Paulie says, today we're just gonna work on the jab and the right hand. And I didn't say anything because you don't say anything when you listen to your coach all the time. But
Yeah.
in my head, I was like, listen, I've been doing this for enough time. I know how to throw a jab and I know how to throw a right hand. And I didn't say that. It's just in my head.
Yeah.
And he started breaking down the smallest thing, like how are you rotating your foot? Are you stepping on? Are you on the ball of your foot, or are you up on your toe? From there, is your calf flexed? Is your quads flexed? Because that's where the power is coming from, right? It's like you're
So
starting
detailed, like getting
exactly
into the 1%.
right, exactly. So at the end of that session, I was another hour by myself, like without him, on the bag again, just working on my right hand and working on my jab, as if I'd never learned how to do it in the first place because now I had other little things to work on, right? So, and even still, there's probably things that I still need to work on, right? So whether you're learning how to make a fist for the first time and what knuckles to punch with, or how to rotate that foot and the calf, it completely translates to everything you do in life, really, especially to bridge the gap. Like we were talking about work, it's like, yeah, I can go and train somebody for money, right? So does that make a successful business? Well, not really, right? Like there's
Mhm.
lots more pieces to the puzzle, and you got to get down to those little things to be top tier, right?
And I think that's where a lot of assumptions happen as well. Is that there's a thing in business when someone's developing called the 150% rule. So and that is like do your job at 100%, and then do the next job that you want to move into at least 50%.
It makes sense, yeah.
Right? And I always treated, when I was going through belt rankings, I always treated my growth in which belt, that I need to know the belt that I'm in at 100%, and the next belt at least 50%. So like, okay, so I'm going from purple to blue, right? And I'm like, okay, great. So I need to know, uh, I got to be halfway there towards achieving the next belt, because the refinement that happens is so detailed. Like what you're saying with like, are you flexing your calf? Like, are you on the ball of your foot or on the toe? And people who are self-aware, and there's something else that you said that I'm going to come back to in a second. People that are self-aware with the fact that, if they get bored because they're at 70% skill set,
Right.
and then they want to move on to the next thing, and then 70% of that, 70% of that, 70% of that, as opposed to starting to really, because it's diminishing returns, right? Like when you're at
Yeah.
80, 90% of a skill, trying to get that 1% might be 6 months
Right.
of very specific training. And then you said something else where, like, here you are, you've got 15 years of experience. You're going into this world-renowned gym, right? Freddie Roach is hanging out. That was a great picture that I saw of you and Freddie Roach as well. So here's Freddie Roach hanging out, watching you, and you've got this situation of having to become the student and kind of like swallow your ego and pride and comply.
Right.
That trait is not only are you ambitious to learn more, but you're also willing to sort of take on the tutelage and knowledge of the person who's giving you something. And you wouldn't have known if you said, "Hey, man, like I know how to throw a left jab. Like it's like, can we do something else?" And you would have lost all of that gold that you ended up coming out with, right? And it made you a better instructor. Right. So when you're teaching someone and they're like, "Yeah, I've been doing this for a couple of years with you now, Teddy, and I don't want to have to throw a jab anymore." What do you say? Like, how do you get them to dial in?
It depends on the person. So if it's somebody who's not going to compete, they just want to hit the mitts, that's fine. I'll just say, okay, you don't want the jab, we'll do something else. We'll work those combos. I mean, at the end of the day, for those people that don't want to compete, they want to be using this for fitness. As long as they sweat, their heart rate's up, they enjoy it. That's the key. Is they got to enjoy it, because they're not going to come back, for the next training session if they didn't enjoy it. So for the ones that don't want to compete, I don't really push it too much.
Right.
I just want to see them.
You're balancing your own expectation around them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I just want them to be healthier. Right. It's whatever they want. For those that do, like I've held mitts for people that should compete, but they just don't want to. Right. Mm-hmm. And then I've also, like I said with Justin, somebody who shouldn't compete but ended up being a great competitor. But to answer the question, if it is somebody that does want to compete, that's when you have to take the role of serious coach. And you'll never have all the knowledge. That's why you look at the best of the best, they're still in the gym all the time. Mm-hmm. And it goes across the board with anything in business as well. Like, you look at the world's most successful people, they're not retired yet. They're still going to work every day. Right. So there's always something to work on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's when someone has that background of, say, a lot of times in an interview or onboarding or whatever else, you try to find out whether someone has done any sports. And I know that, when you're working with a team dynamic, a lot of times people are like, "Oh, what team sports have you done?" And they're like, "Oh, I played soccer, or I played rugby, or whatever else." And not to knock people who do any of those sports, but there's a different thing if someone's like, "Yeah, I did high level of an individual sport," like, say, tennis or boxing or, martial arts. And because there's a self-discipline that ends up growing there. Obviously there's going to be exceptions to the rule, but there's a self-discipline where there's a self-reliance that has to happen. Like, it's not whether you were on a good team and you were a high contributor towards that good team or whatever. It's all on you. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't blame anyone else if you get KO'd in the ring.
Right.
Like, that's it. Like, you can't say, "Oh, well, my trainer didn't do this," or whatever. No, you didn't keep your hands up, or you got caught. Like, there's no one else you can blame. And, that's right. And I think that's just an important quality to someone who does this, right?
They say that, and it'll transfer to any sport where, like you're saying, where it's not a team sport. But they say, like, the boxing ring's the loneliest place in the world, and it very much feels that way because there's nobody there that can fight for you. The same thing with the tennis player. There's nobody there that, if you sprain your ankle during the match, well, you still have to play the match with a sprained ankle, right? Whereas in team sports, you sprain your ankle, somebody will pick up the ball or the puck or whatever, and you can get off the ice. Your team still might win. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so that level of agency is always really important, and I find that it's not always the case. Like there are a lot of obviously team sport people who are really good at being involved in business and et cetera, but there's this very specific quality when it comes to individual sport drive. Mm-hmm. like you can't make any excuses, right? Like you had your son in car racing,
Right.
right? For a
Yeah.
while, and
Right.
so you guys kind of got pretty heavy into it. And I don't think he's doing it as much anymore, but like that was all on him.
Right.
Like here you are, like this is the vehicle you've got.
Right.
There's the racetrack. Like what can you do?
So there's the guys that coached him, what they'll do is they'll jump in your car and beat your time, right? So the coaches there are very good at showing you like it's not the car, it's you. So do better, right?
Yeah.
And the problem with that was, so we were talking about the people that can push through it and find the next thing. Theo, unfortunately, so far he's still so young, but was not one of the kids that were able to do it. He he put so much pressure on himself, and it was, even though he was doing great, it wasn't good enough, and he felt like he was failing. So I think eventually he'll learn how to deal with those emotions and move on. But
But I think as a dad, that's an important thing, that what you're doing is that you're putting your kid in a situation where he isn't in his comfort zone. Like he's you know what that feels like, and you know how good it feels when you overcome something, and then also the lessons that you're learning around, like how do you manage stress and how do you manage that perseverance and the ability to push through something. Those are such vital tools. That are lifelong. They're just going to last forever and ever and ever.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
such huge things. So okay, so we didn't talk too much about unwinding roads. So let's quickly touch base on that while we got a few minutes left in this. So 4x4ing, Jeeps. Your Jeep looks awesome. I went 4x4ing with you once or twice. Once.
Yep.
It was awesome, right? Like we went into some pretty awesome terrain. But you're doing stuff that's crazy, man. Like unwinding roads on YouTube, which I'll link to this podcast as well. How's that experience been?
It's been a wild ride for sure. And actually, I burned out because, and I'm still new at all this, but I had to learn how to edit video, how to shoot video, how to do some like pretty extreme off-roading. I had to learn all that. And I was just pushing and pushing, all while trying to still manage what's going on with PowerCore. And I ended up burning out completely. I had to take, I think it was like a month off where I didn't even touch it. And then when I came back to it, I was doing my 1 year, I was doing like a 1 year review video. And that video, I didn't make it for anybody else. I made that video for me. So how it performed, it didn't matter. I made that video. It ended up performing okay, but it at the end of that video, after editing that, it woke me up. It was like, man, what a wild ride this year has been. The places I've been, the things I've seen, all in British Columbia. It's been crazy. The one thing is, now I sit down a lot to do editing and driving, right?
Yeah,
so I'm definitely gaining a lot of weight, and I gotta start looking at the boxing thing more as like a fitness thing than it was before, because before I was constantly on the mitts and doing all that. Now I'm on the mitts part-time while doing this. So
I know, and as you get older, it catches up faster.
It does, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, your channel is awesome. Unwinding roads, right?
Right. Yes.
Unwinding roads for your 4x4 channel. Powercoreboxing.com. Powercoreboxing.com for the other thing on there, and it's at Unwinding Roads.
Yep.
On Instagram.
Right. It's underscore at unwinding_roads.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. So that's how people can get in touch with you, see all the awesome videos. Some of your drone shots are like next level. They look amazing, man. Really, really cool. And I always enjoy our conversations. For those that you don't know, Teddy and I live in the same hood by accident. And so, we oftentimes have truckside chats that are going on. I'm trying to get you back on a motorcycle soon, but
for sure.
But that'll be 100%, man.
Yeah.
Cool, Teddy. It's awesome talking to you. I'm glad that you've adapted. I love the lessons that you're teaching when it comes to perseverance, pushing through your discomfort. And then also something else that you said was that you treat everyone as individuals, right? Like that's an important leadership trait. that not everyone's the same. Like, what are their objectives? What are their goals? And if someone says they want to be a high performer, they have to get the counterbalanced expectation of what that means. You can't get something without nothing. And if you want to be more relaxed and amateur in your approach, then that's fine. Then the pressure's less, right? But high pressure, high stakes, you got to be able to take that on. That's pretty awesome stuff. Any closing remarks?
Yeah, on that note, and I really wanted to say is about being on the team is even as an individual, it's what, even on a team, it's what you bring to the team as an individual. There's a reason why positions are played, right? It's not just everybody go. So even when you're on a team as an individual, you still have to grow and make your team better. So, yeah.
Yep, there is an I in team. And,
That's right.
and it's you and it matters, 100%.
That's right. Yeah.
That's cool, man. Okay, great. I'll link all the your channel and all that in the context below. It was awesome having you on. And if you're looking at getting some boxing training, then Teddy's where it's at.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, cool. Ciao, brother.
Cheers.